This session is on the models of sexual response. Masters and Johnson were the first to observe and measure at the physical response to sexual arousal. They did this clear back in 1966, and it was not seen favorably by the public. However, it still is the most accurate information on how the body responds during sexual stimulation. It did have one important flaw, though. They only had subjects that had orgasms. The public, the critics felt that they should have continued the research and actually had subjects who were non-orgasmic so they could truly tell how they responded differently than somebody who was orgasmic. Masters and Johnson came up with 4 responses to this human sexual responsive cycle. The first was excitement, the second plateau, the third orgasm, and the last one resolution. And we'll be breaking each one of these into separate phases. Here is an example of 3 females that could all be typical. First one, A, would be a female who becomes excited and then plateau, and you can see plateau, as in geography, is just a higher flat level. And so they just flatten off. They reach a plateau. And then the third phase is to have an orgasm, and women are capable of multiple orgasms, as you can see in this one. And then resolution is basically going back to pre-excitement. The second one, the white line, would be a female that becomes excited and then reaches the plateau phase and just stays there. She would be non-orgasmic. And with this one, you can see the resolution phase goes off more slowly. This woman is likely to need more after-sex play in order to feel satisfied. And the third, C, would be a very highly excitable female where she goes through excitement and plateau all in one step, straight to orgasm, and then a very fast, sharp drop-off to resolution. Men are more predictable, as you can see in this. It's very much like the first example for the woman, where he would become excitement, reach that plateau phase, have an orgasm, and then a resolution. And as we learned in Chapter 3, men are capable of having multiple orgasms, but only after a time called the refractory period. They need time to rebuild the fluids. They need more time to reconstrict the arteries, have a second erection, and then orgasm and release. Helen Kaplan was another researcher that followed Masters and Johnson's work, and she had her own ideas. She felt that you had to have desire before you become excited, so this was a psychological factor difference between that of hers and Masters and Johnson. So she had desire, then excitement and vasocongestion were the second phase, then orgasmic release. She felt that plateau was just a continuation of excitement, so we didn't need that phase, and she felt resolution was just going back to pre-desire, so she didn't feel that needed to be labeled either. Here's a picture of Helen Kaplan's model, desire, excitement, orgasm. It just looks like stair steps. Basically, the models of sexual arousal is an interaction of our mind and our body. The distinguishing desire and arousal would be the difference between desire and becoming aroused. Desire is the psychological motivation for sex, the incentive, the appetite for sexual pleasure. And then arousal is the excitation of the body as it responds to those psychological cues, as well as the physical stimulations. And this slide just shows on the left the internal stimuli, the central arousal system, the brain, and then the external stimuli, the peripheral arousal system, our nervous system, and senses, and how it all together works to activate our sexual response. Becoming aroused is internal and external stimuli that provides cues. It's an emotional, psychological process that can be activated or deactivated. If somebody wants to be sexual, then it doesn't take much to activate that response. However, if somebody becomes aroused but definitely doesn't want to have sex, they can deactivate their response. If their emotions are such that they can guard themselves, then they can stop at that certain point. When our mind describes sexual meaning, genital physiology can become automatic. And people do learn to be sexual. For men, it's often sex is the goal, or orgasm is the goal. It's very spontaneous and physical. It doesn't take much to get them aroused. Women, on the other hand, are more romantic. They want to be involved in loving relationships. They see the emotional connection and often are looking for commitment. And this isn't always true of each gender. We can have males and females that would be opposite of what society's stereotype of that would be. This slide just shows what I was just talking about with society's standards. For men, sex or orgasm is the goal. For women, love is the goal. And my question to you would be, do some men give love to gain sex? Absolutely. They'll say, I love you, so that a woman will give them sex. Do some women give sex to gain love? Absolutely. And again, a controlled response can prevent one from enjoying the response as sexual. Now we're going to take each one of Masters and Johnson's phases and break them down. The first is the excitement phase. This can last minutes to hours. One of the first things that happens is pelvic vasocongestion, basically the engorgement of the blood vessels. The tissue becomes swollen, red, and warm, and the area feels full. For the female, this is going to be the clitoris, the labia, the vaginal opening. For the male, the penis, and then for both would be the nipples. Generalized myotonia is increased muscle tension. There will be greater pulse rate, greater blood pressure, and more rapid breathing rate. Can't you just picture being hooked up to different apparatuses to measure these physiological responses? That's exactly what Masters and Johnson did. Transudation then is the lubrication. So the vagina, it's just going to seep through the vaginal walls. And then the lubrication of the penis is going to come from the Cowper's glands to neutralize the acidity of the urethra, plus to provide the lubrication. The second phase is the plateau phase. This is just a sustaining, leveling off, as the diagram showed of the excitement phase. This can last seconds to minutes. During this phase, a sex flush, kind of like when somebody gets embarrassed. Their face will become reddened. They may have a rash on their chest, and their neck and head also becomes rash-like or red. In the plateau phase for the female, she's going to form the orgasmic platform. This is created by swelling of the labia minora and the outer third of the vagina. Remember, the outer third is where the nerve endings are. This will narrow the vagina, which will have greater intensity of contact with the penis. The clitoris also retracts under the clitoral hood. The myotonia, the muscle contraction, intensifies, and the pelvic thrusting becomes involuntary. You don't have to tell yourself to do that. The third phase is the orgasm phase. This would be the climax, and it is the shortest phase, lasting anywhere from 3 to 15 seconds. I don't know why the shortest phase has to be the best, but that's the situation with this. Female orgasm is usually going to last longer than a male, and then they're capable of multiple orgasms. Basically, an orgasm will be an explosive discharge of neuromuscular tension, so the nerves, the muscles working together. And in the Western culture, orgasm is usually the goal of sexual activity, especially for males. What happens during this orgasm phase physiologically includes tachycardia. This is excessively rapid heartbeat. The pulse, what is normally 70 to 80, will go up to 100 to 180. Hypertension, which is increase in blood pressure, hyperventilation, faster and deeper breathing, and intense myotonia. For the male, orgasm usually includes ejaculation. It's just a natural process, the feelings of inevitability and then the release of the semen. And one reason why men probably reach orgasm more quickly is because of the kind of stimulation, the sensitivity of the penis and surrounding areas, and then past learning. An example of this would be if a boy masturbates. When you masturbate, you please yourself, so the faster the better, right? When you're in a relationship, you'll have to learn to slow that process down so that you can give your partner enough time to become aroused and stimulated before you have an orgasm. Men can learn to have multiple orgasms by not ejaculating during orgasm. We'll be learning about this in our last chapter on sexual dysfunction. But about 5% of the men can easily learn how to do this, and when they do, they'll have briefer refractory periods. For the female, her orgasm is going to feel like she's floating in air. She's suspended, followed by a climax of intense sensation of the clitoral, vaginal area, maybe even the anus. Women respond differently to orgasm. Women have different nerve pathways, and we're all just different. Women also are responsible for multiple orgasms depending on the type of stimulation. There are a couple theories on orgasm. Masters and Johnson said there's only clitoral orgasm. Freud, he said there's two. He said children through childhood masturbation will experience clitoral orgasm, but if they continued as an adult to have clitoral orgasm, then they were regressing back to their childhood. He said adults would reach orgasm through vaginal penetration. So I believe we can prove both of these theories wrong. It's an ongoing controversy. Many people say that there are lots of different types of orgasm. Deep penetration that stimulates the cervix is even called a uterine orgasm. So the conversation continues. We've already talked about Kegel exercises, but this slide talks a little bit more about how they're involved with sexual response. Originally, of course, initially, it was to help get the vagina back in shape after childbirth, but basically the main reason we want to do that is so that when a woman is older, she can prevent urine from leaking from her bladder by being able to hold it. These are exercises of pubicoccus muscle, and it does also increase the ability to experience orgasm. It's recommended for pregnant women to begin this and then doing it your entire life. It's also suggested for men as well to practice holding the muscles that would prevent the flow of urine, called Kegel exercises. The last phase that Masters and Johnson had for the sexual response cycle is the resolution phase. Basically, the body just returns to its unaroused state and goes into a deep body relaxation. Here's an overview of what we've been talking about. Masters and Johnson had their 4-phase model. Excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution, whereas Kaplan, she felt they had to have desire first, and then went to vasocongestion, and then orgasm. She said that resolution and plateau really didn't need to have distinct stages for her model.